I'm Bonnie Glaser, Managing Director of the Indo-Pacific Program at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Welcome to the China Global Podcast. Tensions between China and Japan have spiked since November 7th, when Japan's newly elected Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, said in the Japanese parliament that a Chinese attack on Taiwan would be a situation threatening Japan's survival. Under Japan's 2015 security laws, that suggests Japan's self-defense forces could be activated to respond. The following day, a Chinese consul general in Osaka, Xue Jian, posted that China had no choice but to cut off the prime minister's head. That post was subsequently taken down. China-Japan relations have since plummeted. China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, stated that Takaichi had, quote, crossed a red line that should not have been touched. China has taken retaliatory actions, restricting tourism to Japan and banning imports of Japanese seafood, among other actions. So why has Beijing reacted so strongly, and how far are China-Japan relations likely to deteriorate? Joining us today to discuss the latest episode in China-Japan relations, we have Professor Akio Takahara. Professor Takahara is a distinguished visiting professor at Tokyo Women's Christian University and an emeritus professor at the University of Tokyo. He's also an honorary senior fellow on Chinese politics at the Asia Society's Policy Institute's Center for China Analysis. Welcome to the China Global Podcast, Akio.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. It's great to be on this program.
Well, it's going to be terrific to hear your insights. So I want to start with level setting this issue for our audience. Before this episode started, what was the state of China-Japan relations? How would you describe it?
Well, in fact, the relations were not so bad. China resumed visa exemptions for Japanese visitors, for example. And the Chinese side also announced the partial cancellation of the restriction on the importation of aquatic products from Japan. And at the end of October, Prime Minister Takaichi and President Xi actually had a good meeting on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in South Korea. So that was the situation.
Well, I wonder how you understand Beijing's reaction. There's been, I think, some speculation that was in fact because of Xi Jinping's recent meeting with Prime Minister Takaichi, that it became maybe a sort of loss of face issue for Xi Jinping. And some people say that was the main reason why China reacted so strongly. But what do you think is the main audience of Beijing's reaction? Is this about their own domestic public? Are they trying to warn Taiwan? Or is it really all about sending this message to Prime Minister Takaichi?
Well, I think the message is emitted to all directions. First of all, Taiwan has always been a very important question for the Chinese Communist Party leadership. It actually started in 1895, the war between Japan and the Qin dynasty at that time. And that was when Taiwan was given to Japan. Japan colonized Taiwan, and the education, the history narrative that the Chinese Communist Party are telling the people, it's part of this very serious damage that they received from all the imperialist powers in those days. And Xi Jinping, as you know, has worked in Fujian province, that's the opposite side of Taiwan, for 17 years. And he's very aware of this part of history. So Taiwan is very important, has been very important for him. And now, as his legacy, I think he is seriously aiming for unification with Taiwan. So that's one context. And the other is, as you know, in Taiwan, they have a new president, who the Chinese side don't like at all, because of the anti-mainland, stance that, President, Lai Ching-te has been taking. And, also, since, Takaichi has been well known for her pro-Taiwanese posture. That has always been a concern. So I think the direction of the message is on all fronts, as it were, and they want to tell other countries too that this is the kind of treatment that you will get if you intervene, in their view, on Taiwanese affairs.
Yes, well, of course, the Chinese call that killing the chicken to scare the monkey, and
yes, that's right.
I think many languages have a similar saying.
Right.
Were you personally surprised by the reaction, or after what she said, did you expect that there would be a strong reaction? Some people say that what Prime Minister Takaichi said really wasn't new. You think it was, or was this something that was different from what prior Japanese prime ministers have said?
Her remarks that are under investigation now is only a very small part of a long Q&A that she had in Parliament with this opposition party member. And if you actually read the Q&A in full, you will understand very clearly that she is not changing Japan's policy. Takaichi did not say that Japan would go and defend Taiwan if it was attacked by China. Some international media have mistakenly reported that that's what she said. But no, that's not what she said. And you can easily understand from the first half of the Q&A that there are very strict restrictions to the use of force when Japan is not directly attacked. Well, of course, when Japan is directly attacked by a foreign country, then we will be all out using all the force that we have to defend our country. But what she was saying is that if there is a blockade or if there is a direct attack on Taiwan, there could be a situation which we call a survival threatening situation, in which Japan could use collective defense, resort to collective defense, meaning that we will use force. But in fact, if you read the first half, it's very clear the use of force is not done to protect Taiwan. But if the American forces are involved, then there could be a need for Japan to use our force to defend the American forces, since those American forces are going to use, most likely, their bases in Japan. So we will naturally be involved in the hostilities. That's the context. It's a bit complicated. But actually, she did not say that Japan will go out and defend Taiwan if Taiwan was attacked by China. That's point number one. And point number two is what was new in the answer was that she actually raised these concrete examples of Japan acknowledging that there is a survival threatening situation in which Japan will resort to collective self-defense and use force. Because the previous prime ministers or whoever, the political leaders, avoided giving concrete examples, the so-called the strategy of ambiguity. But Takaichi later came out and said that there are certain points that I have reflected on, and from now on I will not raise these concrete examples in these opportunities. And so the Chinese could have reacted differently, I think. But maybe whoever reported to Xi Jinping just took this last part of her remarks, cut that out of context of the whole Q&A, and showed it to Xi Jinping. Oh, she said this, she said Japan could go into a survival threatening situation if the Chinese use battleships and attack Taiwan. And then Xi Jinping apparently got very angry. But whether he actually saw the whole text or not is one question that we don't know. Most likely he didn't. And the person or whoever showed that last part of her remarks did that deliberately, or did that person did not understand the full context of what Takaichi said? These are unclear questions that we have no answers to at the moment.
Mm. And of course, Wang Yi, having previously been China's ambassador to Japan, should understand Japan and this issue very, very well. So that should have been helpful, but it's hard to know what he was advocating personally. So yeah, lots of questions. Could you explain um, why a Chinese takeover of Taiwan poses an existential threat to Japan? And is there a consensus among Japanese on this issue? You know, we have a debate in the United States, I think, among scholars as well as officials, whether Taiwan is a vital interest for the United States and for what reason. But I've always thought that given Taiwan's close just geographical proximity to Japan and the fact that it's so close to Japanese sea lanes, that this is existential for Japan. So I wasn't really surprised about that. But some people said that, yes, she just said the quiet part out loud. So is there a consensus in Japan on this issue? And if so, what's your understanding as to why this is existential?
Well, if the Taiwan was unified with mainland China, that would be a very big change in our security environment, no doubt about that. But if the Taiwanese people agreed and unification took part peacefully, there's nothing that foreigners can do about that. But if force is used in the unification process, if it ever happened, that is a different matter altogether, since, as you said, Japan is so close to Taiwan. And you remember when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, immediately after she left, the PLA drills took place around Taiwan, and they shot a couple of missiles into our exclusive economic zone. So it is of a very big concern, but can we call it an survival threatening situation? And that depends on a lot of other variables, I would say. If Japan is not directly attacked, I don't think we can say that it has already, we have already gone into a survival threatening situation. So it doesn't, in my opinion, just unification only will not constitute a survival threatening situation.
So far, we've seen selective pressure from China on Japan. There are some things, of course, we haven't seen, like an effort to restrict rare earth magnets, which could still happen. But so far, it seems to me that China is trying to send some signals, but so far has exercised some restraint. I wonder how you think this will play out. Do you think we're going to see Beijing ratchet up pressure? Do you think this is going to last the entire term that Takaichi is in office as prime minister, or is there a way to step down from this crisis?
Mm-hmm. Always when these things happen, China climbs up the tree too high, and they don't know how to climb down. So we have to help them climb down and bring back the relations to previous situation. But you're right. Compared to 15 years ago when there was a trawler collision incident, or 13 years ago when there was a big clash over the Japanese government's purchasing of Senkaku Islands, or what the Chinese call Diaoyu, there were similar clashes with Japan. But compared to those days, there are a few things that the Chinese haven't done yet this time, including the restriction of rare earth exports, but also boycotting of Japanese products. That's another. And mobilizing anti-Japanese demonstrations. That's another. So I think one basic reason is the Chinese economy compared to 13 years ago, 15 years ago, is in a bad shape. And there is mounting dissatisfaction amongst the people. And if you remember, even in 2012, when the previous big clash happened, the demonstration, which was supposed to be an anti-Japanese demonstration in Shenzhen, went out of control. And the people rushed to the Shenzhen Municipal Party Committee. So if they mobilize the people this time, similar things could happen. So we can see that nationalism is a poisonous drug, as it were. It can be very effective if used properly, but it could kill you. It could kill the Chinese Communist Party if they overdosed on it. So, and also there are a lot of Chinese people involved in the production and sales of Japanese products. So I think that's why these measures have not been taken. And at the same time, for the leadership, Japan bashing can be useful in integrating the nation. So it's a very delicate drug that they have in their hand. It's a good way to gather support. Japan can be a lightning rod in taking all these mounting dissatisfaction amongst the people. And I think as long as this effect is felt or perceived by the leadership, it could take a long time before the relations could get better. It could take 1 year. It could take even 2 years, as it happened between 2012 and 2014.
Mm. What is your advice to your government? Do you think that Tokyo should be proactively trying to find a way to lower tensions? I think some people would advise avoiding being seen as weak, because sometimes Beijing can take advantage of weakness. So we wouldn't. I think Japan, the U.S. wouldn't want to see China further emboldened. That's one possible outcome. But what do you think is the best strategy for Japan to manage this issue and this relationship?
Well, I think we should stand firm and stay cool. We should not respond to their provocation. Do well in diplomatic and the propaganda war that the Chinese side is waging in full force all around the world. The Myanmar junta, their spokesman has criticized Japan in the same language that the Chinese Communist Party has been using. And, most recently, Wang Yi and Lavrov, the two foreign ministers of China and Russia, have met, and they both accused Japan. These things are happening. So I think it's an opportunity, actually, for Japan to take advantage of this attention that Japan relations are getting all over the world, and tell the world how we've been contributing to world peace and world development, and we remain to be a peaceful nation. And at the same time, why we are in such a state of having to increase defense budgets, even though we have a big fiscal deficit, the pressure that we are getting, the physical pressure that we are getting every day from the Chinese side. The most recent incident was the radar locking by Chinese interceptors on our aircraft. All these things are happening in reality, and we have to make sure that people understand what exactly Takaichi said. I think the international media have got it wrong also. So all these PR work is something that we have to do. But it's an opportunity, it's a difficult situation, but let's turn it into a good opportunity to tell the world the reality of Japan and the plight that we are in facing this physical challenge from China.
I very much agree with that. Great advice. The Chinese Coast Guard, shortly after this episode, it took the opportunity again to conduct the patrols inside the territorial waters around the Senkaku Islands, which I think they had last done a month previously, so not that unusual. But I wonder if you could explain whether the Senkakus, which, as you said, the Chinese call the Diaoyu Islands, whether that dispute is connected to Taiwan in Beijing's strategic thinking, and whether there is a risk of that escalating, or you think that is pretty much under control.
Mm-hmm. The two issues are connected. For Beijing, of course, the more important question is that of Taiwan. But since they claim that Senkaku is not part of Okinawa, Japan, but Senkaku, or in their language, Diaoyu, actually, they started calling those islands Diaoyu on their islands only in December 1971. Up to 1971, in all their maps printed, they had Jienge Liedao, that is Senkaku, as you read in the Chinese characters. But anyway, it was in December 1971 that they started claim sovereignty over Senkaku, or what they call Diaoyu. And their claim is these islands don't belong to Okinawa, but they belong to Taiwan. That's their argument. So if they try to unify with Taiwan, then what is the implication for their behavior or their actions towards the Senkakus or Diaoyu? Because in their argument, Diaoyu is part of Taiwan, and now they're unifying with Taiwan. What does that mean to us who have the administration over the Senkakus? So in that way, it's directly connected. And if the Chinese started to move on Senkaku, arguing once they have Taiwan with them, saying that we are going to move to Diaoyu to fully unify with Taiwan, and then that becomes a completely different situation for us. That's going to be a direct attack on Japan. So that is going to be a very serious question that we will have to face.
The Chinese in the past, at least among scholars, have sometimes said that Okinawa is not part of Japan and is part of China. And since this episode started, it seems to me that somewhat more authoritative voices in China are saying this. So do you expect that Beijing may make a more formal claim on Okinawa? It seems to me that it would introduce a very contentious issue into the China-Japan relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Now they're saying that they've said this before. I'm going to raise the question of the San Francisco Peace Treaty. It was the San Francisco Peace Treaty that defined the post-World War II order around Japan. And this has been the world order for the past 70 odd years. But now China is more seriously challenging this international order, saying that they don't acknowledge, they have never acknowledged the San Francisco Peace Treaty. Therefore, they cannot acknowledge that Okinawa is part of Japan, blah, blah, blah. But the interesting fact is, this kind of argument comes out from the propaganda department, not from the foreign ministry, because I think the foreign ministry people fully understand that this is going to be revolutionary. This is going to actually be a big challenge, direct challenge to the international order in East Asia. And the Chinese have always claimed that they would never challenge the existing international order. But if they start officially arguing that they cannot acknowledge the San Francisco Peace Treaty, therefore we cannot acknowledge that Okinawa is part of Japan, that is going to raise a very serious fundamental international conflict, I think. So the foreign ministry has not decided to go that far, and I hope they will stay that way.
So lastly, I wanted to ask you about the view in Japan of the reaction of the United States. And we know there was a phone call between Prime Minister Takaichi and President Trump, and then there were some different interpretations maybe of what was actually said by Trump in that call. But then, of course, there's been media reports that the United States is not giving Japan enough public support. And I think there's a widely held view in general that President Trump really wants to keep his relationship with Beijing on an even keel. He had a good meeting with Xi Jinping when he was in Busan, and then he's going to likely go to Beijing in April of next year. So I wonder how this is seen in Japan. I mean, do people think that the United States is not supporting our ally enough, and we're actually encouraging Japan to avoid provoking Beijing? I'm just curious what your perspective is.
So our impression is that both the Pentagon and the State Department, they are as they were, supporting the alliance. And what we are not sure about is Mr. Trump's policy towards China. And we do get the impression that he wants to make this big deal with China. So until he makes that deal in April next year, he doesn't want any thing that could rock the relationship, that will derail the relationship that he's trying to establish with the Chinese side. That's the impression that we get.
And maybe I'll just ask one question about the Japanese public. Prime Minister Takaichi has tremendous support in Japan. She's, I think it's around 75%. Is this episode actually contributing to her public support? And is this going to help Japan ultimately resolve this? Or do you think that this means that Japan's just not going to be able to signal any willingness to compromise, even if it wanted to do so?
Mm-hmm. This is a very interesting situation. As you know, the public opinion about her remarks at the parliament is divided. Many people think it was an off-the-cuff remark that she should not have made, raising these concrete examples, because those would easily mislead the audience. But when it comes to our response, our perception about what China's doing to us now, we are all united. We don't like what the Chinese are doing at all. And I think that's contributed to the high support rate that she's getting at the moment. And maybe one of the aims of China in adopting these measures to pressure Japan was to divide the public opinion further. But it's backfired, as it were, on them. The effect has been the opposite. It made her support rate go up higher. So this is often what happens when the Chinese try to exert pressure on other countries.
We've been talking with Professor Akio Takahara, and he's one of Japan's leading experts on China. So we're really, really delighted that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your perspectives.
Yes, thank you so much, Bonnie. It was very enjoyable. I look forward to more opportunities to have conversations with you and learn from you.